Good evening, everyone. It is now 7:34 p.m. It is August 25, 2021. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge. Call the meeting to order. This meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is in compliance with the provisions of Executive Orders 103 and 104, the Open Public Meetings Act, and associated regulations. Notice of this meeting was published in the Bergen Record on January 20th, 2021, and the Ridgewood News on January 22nd, 2021, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last four digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address prior to making a public comment. Members of the public were permitted to submit written comments prior to the meeting via mail or email, which will be read during the public comment period. With that, Marina, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mayor?
Here.
Mr. Caslin?
Here.
Ms. Boland is absent tonight.
He is excused. Yep.
Mr. Merman?
Here.
Mr. Grasso? I believe he is absent at the moment.
He is, yes.
Mr. Cray?
Here.
Mr. Kellyan?
Here.
Councilman Kinigo is absent tonight.
He is excused. Yep.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer?
Here.
And Mr. Esposito.
Here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Marina. Our first item on the agenda tonight is the approval of minutes. We do have minutes available from the last meeting on August 11th. It was circulated for review. Turn over to the board. Any comments on the draft resolutions provided? Okay, there being no comments, we have a motion to approve, please.
So made, Merman.
Thank you, Mr. Merman.
Second. Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Cray.
Just for the record, it was just Mr. Gibbons who was absent at that meeting, but everyone else who's here tonight is eligible.
Great. We'll just do a voice vote then?
Also Mr. Kellyan was absent at that meeting. I'm
There
sorry.
you go.
And we can do a voice vote.
Okay. We have motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain?
Abstain.
Mr. Gibbons abstain? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Arkelian abstains.
Mr. R. Kelly abstain as well. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda this evening is the memorialization of the application approving excuse me, variance for maximum improved lot coverage to Betsy and Matthew Grosser for 68 Wayne Avenue, Block 814, Lot 21. Do you have any comments from the board to the draft resolutions that were circulated? Okay. Marina, I just have one. There's just a typo at the top of the first page there. We just have to correct Betsy's name.
Okay, I'll fix that.
Very, very minor. Okay, with that one comment, may I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Oh.
Craig.
Second, Merman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cray. Thank you, Mr. Merman.
Okay, and I'll do the roll call vote.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian and Mr. Gibbons are ineligible to vote on this resolution. Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Marina. All right. Our next item on the agenda this evening is a completeness review for Greg Goff, Amanda, and Paul, 470 Windsor Road, Block 815, Lot 16. Seeking to install a new in-ground pool, patio, and cabana, maximum lot coverage, maximum improved lot coverage, and side yard setback variance relief are required. I still don't see that Mr. Behrens has joined us yet.
I sent him a message. I haven't heard back yet.
Yeah.
So Mr. Barron's called us just as a heads up last Friday, and he said he wasn't going to be on. He was going to have a substitute like the last meeting. I don't know if anybody knows who the substitute is.
No, I know he's still on vacation.
Right.
Okay.
I can try and make a phone call over to Burgess Associates and see if I can contact Steve if we want to take just a short break.
Yeah, why don't we just, why don't we adjourn briefly if we can track somebody down. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. May I have a second?
Second, Merman.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, any abstained? Okay, there being none, we are adjourned at 7:41 PM.
What time should we be back?
Let's reconvene here at 7:55. Just give Marina a chance to track somebody down. Okay, thank you.
So we have the recording running at this time.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, Michael's back. Jim, you there?
I am here.
Okay. Just got to start your video when you can.
Yep.
All right, I think we got everybody back, so that's good. All right, it's now 7:55. We will now reconvene the meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board for River Edge at 7:55 PM. Marina, would you call the roll?
Mr. Mayor,
Here,
Mr. Caslin,
Here.
Mr. Merman,
Here.
Mr. Cray,
Here.
Mr. Arkelian,
Here.
Mr. Gibbons,
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Here.
Mr. Esposito.
Here.
Okay, everyone is back.
All right, and for the record now, in attendance, we have our borough engineer, Rob Costa, and filling in for our planner this evening is Steve Lyden of Burgess Associates. Good evening, gentlemen. So when we adjourned the meeting, we had reached the point in the agenda for this evening, the completeness review for, excuse me, Gregoff, Amanda, and Paul, 470 Windsor Road, Block 815, Lot 16. This is an application seeking maximum lot coverage, maximum improved lot coverage, and side yard setback variance relief for the installation of a new in-ground pool, patio, and cabana. Marina, I will turn the floor to you.
Okay, prior to this meeting, I reviewed the proofs submitted by the applicants and found them to be sufficient for the board to have jurisdiction tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, both Mr. Behrens and I have looked at the drawing, and we believe it is complete for the purposes of beginning the public hearing process. We do have some questions about what is being proposed, but those are not completeness items, so we believe the board could proceed tonight if that's the board's choice.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions from the board at this time? Okay. There being none, could I entertain a motion to approve completeness?
So moved.
So moved.
Gibbon?
I'll
Okay.
second Eric Killian.
Okay, Mr. Gibbons and Mr. Arakelian. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, I'll do the roll. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Craig,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
and Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll now move into the new business portion of the agenda this evening. For Gregov, Amanda and Paul, 470 Windsor Road, Block 815, Lot 16, seeking maximum lot coverage, maximum improved lot coverage, and side yard setback variance relief. The installation of a new in-ground pool, patio, and cabana. I believe the applicant is here this evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello.
And I
Hello.
believe you have.
Do you have, yeah, I wasn't sure who else is on with you tonight.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Paul Gregov, Amanda Gregov's here, and then we have Michael O'Brien on. He's our pool designer. And then Paul Gdansky, our civil engineer.
Okay, so before we get started, I'll just have to swear you in, Mr. and Mrs. Gregov. So if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And would you like to give a summary before your professionals start, or should I swear them in now as well?
You could swear them in now and then we can give a summary. Does that work?
Okay,
That's fine. Sure.
so we can start with Mr. O'Brien. Could you please state your name, spell your last name for the record, and provide your address?
Yeah, my name is Michael O'Brien. It's O''Brien. My address is 417 Broad Street in Bloomfield, New Jersey, 07003.
Okay, and if you, sorry, you can keep your right hand up. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and could you tell the board some information about your background, experience, education, and if you've
Sure.
testified before?
I went to Syracuse University and I majored in landscape architecture. I've worked for a number of pool companies in the Westchester, Dutchess County area of New York, and the northern New Jersey area of obviously New Jersey. I've worked here at the Pool Boss for the last 2 years, and I worked at another high-end design firm in Essex County for the previous 3 years, or the prior 3 years to that. Guess that would be really it.
Any questions from the board about the credentials presented? Any objection to accepting the credentials as presented? Okay, we'll accept him, Mr. O'Brien, this evening.
And then
Thank
we
you.
have the other professional, Mr. Gdansky. Am I pronouncing that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, could you please state your full name for the record, spell your last name, and provide your address, please?
Sure, it's Paul Gdansky, Gdanski, and my address is 633 Woodmont Lane, Sloatsburg, New York, 10974.
Okay, Mr. Gdansky, could you give us your background and credentials as well, please?
Sure.
I'll just do the oath real quick.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was writing. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
I've been, I have a master's in civil engineering. I've been practicing engineering for 28 years. I've appeared before a number of boards throughout Bergen County over the years, and I've been doing pool, a lot of pool work for about like 10 years now.
Any questions on Mr. Gdansky's credentials? Okay,
I have one question. Are you a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey?
Yeah, yes, and New York. Yep.
Have you ever appeared before the Borough River Edge before?
No.
Okay.
any other questions?
Any other Bergen County towns that you've testified before?
Yeah, Saddle River, Woodcliff Lake, Old Tappan, Tenafly.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gdansky. We can accept your credentials. Let's move forward then. Mr. or Mrs. Gregov, if you would go ahead and provide us with a summary of your application this evening, please.
Sure. So thank you to all the members of the board for hearing us this evening. Again, I'm Paul Gregov. This is my wife, Amanda Gregov. We live at 470 Windsor Road. And we're here to just request variance relief, and to accommodate an in-ground pool in our backyard with some patio and a cabana. Just a little background on us. We moved to River Edge about a year ago now, so last April. After about a year of looking for a home, and we fell in love with the town, really the quaint kind of suburban feel about River Edge, and fell in love with our neighbors. I think a few of which are on the call tonight. We even went to kind of an event with them before we moved in. They talked to us when we moved in about how much they loved the house that we were moving into and the development that was done to it. It fit very nicely into the town, and they very much appreciated that. When we moved in, all the grass around our house was just dirt. So we did a lot of improvement to put a ton of grass in. We put some shrubbery out front that we've gotten comments from, again, look very beautiful in the neighborhood. Within the last year, we actually got married in the house because of COVID. So that was interesting. And we welcomed a baby boy in the last year into our lives, which is very exciting. One consideration when we picked the house, specifically, if you look in the backyard, there's a vast amount of green space in the backyard. And after looking at about maybe 20 to 25 homes in the area and seeing several of which that had some pools in the backyard with patio, we said, okay, this is a great house. It's on a great block. We love the neighbors and things like that. So we figured our intentions were to always put a pool in the backyard. So after moving in, we basically, kind of got settled a little bit for the last year, and then worked with Michael and Paul to design what we thought would be our optimal kind of layout in the backyard, or basically our optimal future state design in the backyard. In doing so, we realized that there were some impervious coverage rules, which kind of Michael and Paul let us know about. But we didn't really fully, I guess, understand, and maybe it was a little naive at the time, what that totally meant. So we did go forward with creating a plan that we thought would be optimal for what we wanted. And what we wanted was to maintain a very suburban feel in our backyard, not make it too urban. We just moved out of the city. We didn't want that anymore, but still to install a pool. Now, when we designed that, it came out to about a 56% impervious coverage. And at the time, we submitted the application without knowing what this board traditionally approved. We just didn't have any kind of research to go off of, and we just didn't know, quite frankly. I do want to show, though, when we did the plan, we tried to maintain a suburban feel. Ms. Stinley, am I allowed to show an image of a 3D model of what the backyard would look like? Because I just want to try to bring to life the amount of landscaping we would do.
Yes, you
as an
can.
exhibit.
You can pull that up. I believe screen sharing is available. And what is it? Just one image, or is
There'll
it
be
multiple?
There will be 3 images that I'm going to show. The 56% as a 3D image.
Okay, we'll do
Then-
exhibit A, 1, and then 2 and 3.
Great. So here's Exhibit A. Can everybody see this picture? I'm sharing my screen now. Yes. Okay.
I see a few head nods.
Okay. So this is the backyard of 56%. What I want to point out here is our intention is to install a very significant amount of landscaping. None of these shrubbery or flowers are in the backyard today. And we intend to provide the visual appeal, that suburban feel for all of our neighbors and ourselves, obviously, as we look into our backyard. We are also going to install this white fence, which we think will provide privacy and, again, visual appeal for our 5 adjacent neighbors, as well as for anybody who's driving by on the street or has a visual to our backyard from the area. In addition to that, as part of the plan in this green area over here that I'm kind of moving my mouse around, I'll draw a little box. The plan is to install 3 additional, I think Coltech units they're called. I'm going to let Paul speak to this afterward, but essentially we have 1 seepage pit underground today. And the intention is to, we want to be 100% sure essentially that we have no drainage issues, one for ourselves, but also for our neighbors, right? So when we worked with Paul, the calculations came out, we put in 3 additional units and those would be planted underground here in this green space. Now, again, that's all I had for Exhibit A, Ms. Stinley. So again, we submitted the plan and we didn't really know what this board traditionally approved. After we submitted, we watched maybe 6 or 7 recordings of your previous meetings and learned that 56% is well outside the realm of possibility for something that this board would approve. So we would like to propose a second exhibit, if I could just show it. So your site, it's basically an alternate site plan, removing a whole bunch of patio, and we've shaded the site plan that you have today with red of the areas that we're planning to remove and shifting of the cabana. So
Okay, this will be Exhibit A2.
okay, so that is this. So today we have, this is the house kind of down in this area. This is the existing deck. We have an existing stairway on the side that's going to be removed, and this existing patio is going to be removed. That's in your plan. All of the red shaded area with the associated square footage and percentages are going to be removed from the existing plan. Just to do the math for you, that comes out to just about 48% coverage, whereas previously we had 56%. Now that still includes this cabana. We really, as we were optimally trying to design the backyard for what we want for ourselves and our family, we'd like to try to keep this cabana. So we put it in here as 12 by 16 and just moved it closer to the pool with patio coverage. One thing I want to note is the side yard setback variance would be negated with this give back of patio. So we wouldn't need that anymore. So it'd just be the 48%, I believe. And then the size of the cabana, the height of the cabana, if I remember correctly from the letter of denial, and the amount of land coverage as well as the variances. So this would be 48%. And then the last image I just want to show is if Ms. Stinley, I'm going to do the third one here.
Okay, that'll be Exhibit A3.
Great. Is just a revised 3D image with a significant reduction in the patio on this side, a significant reduction in the patio on this side, and moving the cabana closer to the pool. And you can see we maintain a tremendous amount of green space, a lot of landscaping. We're putting in the white fence and adding the 3 seepage pits, which we believe is a significant public benefit to our neighbors and the town. And it's why we wanted to propose this tonight. We recognize 48% is still pretty high for what you traditionally approve. However, just given what we think versus what we've seen in the past is a significant amount of landscaping and public benefit to our neighbors, we would like the board's consideration of the 48%. And so that's kind of where I'll stop. I know, Michael, I don't know if you want to just talk about sizing of pool that we went with.
Yeah, I just want to really touch on a couple points, 2 points to be specific. One of the comments Paul made with the reduction of the patio exhibit C or 3. You can see that we are still trying to maintain about a 3-foot walkway around the pool. As a pool designer and through the vast amount of pools I've designed and watched get installed, one of my biggest recommendations to homeowners is to have at least 3 to 4 feet of walkable apron or patio around the pool. Now, it's not only, an aesthetic, it's also a matter of safety. The materials that we plan to propose to use would be slip resistant, have texture to them. Like Paul and Amanda alluded to, they just recently introduced a beautiful baby boy to this world. And we would hate to have any kind of accidents, slip accidents on wet lawn, as water obviously tends to splash out of the pool. Muddy area, slick grass, accidents can happen. So I try to always maintain 3 to 4 feet of walkway around the pool. My second point is that we've made a significant adjustment to the size of the pool. Typically in my design world, the medium-sized pool that I look to install on a vast majority of projects is a 1632 pool. We're proposing a 1428. Obviously, we're making that concession to fit within certain coverages, certain setbacks. But being asked to go any smaller than that, I really feel the Gregoffs and the backyard loses that kind of not grandiose effect of having a large pool, but having proportionate balance in the backyard. So those are my 2 touching points. Typically, my company, where our wheelhouse is 1632, 1836. We don't really design and install pools much larger than that, just because of, again, impervious coverage, setbacks. And then again, obviously, we do install our 1428s and our, sometimes you do have homeowners that live in tight backyards. Like Rutherford, for example, where small impervious coverage, they're only allowed about 25%. And their setbacks and their yard sizes are a lot smaller. So it ends up pigeonholing them into a smaller pool. For the Gregoffs, though, we really felt, Paul and Amanda and I really felt that 1428 wasn't being overly egregious, and it really fit and balanced the yard appropriately, even with the reduction in patio.
And then Paul Gdansky, I don't know if you could just speak to the calculations.
Sure.
Quickly.
I don't know if, can I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So over in this area on the plan, I provided the drainage calculation that was designed for 2 inches of rainfall over the surface area of the improvements that we were proposing to add. And that turned out to be 3 Coltech 330 XL HD units, which are located in this area. And the water, there's drains around the pool that will collect the water and run and divert it into the Coltech units, which will percolate into the ground.
Great, thanks, Paul.
No problem.
I think that's all we had. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's turn it over to our planner for his review. Steve?
Sure, thank you. I hope my volume's up high enough. If not, let me know. I do have a couple of questions. I guess since Mr. Gdansky was just up, and if I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, the drawing you've got on the screen, what's the date on that? And what's the revision date?
The revision date is 5/30/21.
Okay, so that's the one, that's the drawing that's on file. You have a chart on this drawing on the right side of the drawing as you look at it, improved lot coverage calculation.
Yeah, that's the number is wrong. It should be 28.9.
What should be 28.9?
The lot coverage number.
Well, okay, 28.9.
Believe that's what was in the letter of denial too.
Well, I was looking at the features and I only have a 11 by 7 sheet, so it's hard to read, so bear with me. But
Sure.
I see you've got existing driveway, walk and steps with a certain figure, existing AC, proposed pool, proposed patio and walk, proposed equipment pad. As I look at your drawing, there's also a wall that surrounds the cabana area, the back of the deck. the
That's
side of
not a
the deck.
wall, that's the drain. Oh, you're talking about this block wall on the corner here?
No,
No, that's not a wall, that's just drains.
it
That's
says,
for drainage purposes.
if you look at the proposed 12 by 16 cabana, you have an elevation of 74.2. And right behind it, you've got, right next to it, you've got
Yeah,
block wall.
It's pointing out that black wall at the corner. of the
Oh,
property
yeah,
wall.
okay.
The leader line,
Yeah,
line.
that's to the wall in the right corner. See the wall in the right, it's an existing wall in the right corner. It's a small wall.
Okay, was that included in the impervious calculations?
No, not the wall,
few
no.
stones, the thing in our yard.
It's a few stones in the backyard that were just sitting here when we moved in. We can get rid of them. They're not important to us whatsoever, if that's an issue.
I'm trying to find out about the information on the drawing, so I've got some questions for the preparer. So that's not included in the,
That's correct. We can remove it if necessary.
what does the, and again, I'm looking at 11 by 17. What does that black line right next to the black wall, which goes around the proposed pool area and the cabana represents?
That's a drain.
That's a drain.
To collect the water from the patio.
That's the slot drain, which you have a
Yes.
detail on your drawing?
Yes, there's a detail there. Right there.
Okay, I was wondering where that was, because okay, now I see the line going to it, okay. Okay, I also had some questions for the owners, if I might, Mr. Chairman. This cabana, how tall is it?
I think there was a potential variance for it to be under 12 feet. We'd make it under 12 feet. So whatever it needs to be within compliance from a height perspective.
Has this been designed?
No, it's a proposal. It hasn't been actually
Well,
fully
you can just-
from a height perspective.
You can design something that's not constructed yet.
Well, we're going to design it to be just under 12 feet.
What are the proposed materials of this cabana?
Maybe
As of right now, Michael, I don't know if you have,
Yeah.
if you know, like a
Because-
typical.
So, it's gonna be a open air cabana, so it's gonna be 4 pressure treated posts with pressure treated underframe, like roof framing. More than likely asphalt shingles, something to match the existing roof on the home. Going back to the 3D model, there would be proposed columns or pillars built to kind of stone surround the posts. We haven't really gone into detail over, specific finishes on this structure, but, this is just like a representation of a structure that Paul, Amanda, and I have like looked at before. It really doesn't lend to any type of materials, but kind of just providing you that open air feel. It's not going to have walls. And then obviously you can see the stone columns that the posts are resting on.
What kind of utilities are going to be extended to this area of the property if it's approved?
More than likely just electricity, just for, an outlet, an accessory outlet, maybe, a light, a couple of recessed lights, and potentially a ceiling fan. There will be no bathroom plumbing, water lines, kitchen. It's really just more or less shade relief. Right, Paul and Amanda?
Correct, 100%.
It's
That's
sun
correct,
relief.
yeah.
It's sun relief.
Yeah, maybe electric, right, for just a
Yeah.
couple outlets or lights, or to
Yep.
the Michael's point, a ceiling fan, but for the
It's
most
not
part.
gonna be
it's just safety.
inhabitable. Like, it's not meant to live in, it's not meant to, rent out. It's really meant for just sun relief.
Correct.
At 12 feet by 16, it's rather large. How were the dimensions of this proposed structure determined?
So the structure dimensions were proposed by myself. Like I said, I've designed a number of different structures, structure footprints, pool landscapes. I've always felt that anything like 10 by 10, 12 by 12 was just a little bit too tight. Once you put the columns in with the overhang, you're really reducing the space. Again, they just welcomed a new baby to this world, and I believe are planning to have additional children. They also have families and friends. So
Correct.
trying to make the space not overly egregious in size. Again, proportion, trying to give a nice proportionate layout from green space on the right to Cabana on the left.
The drawings that we've been provided show the fence around the rear yard to be chain link fence. This 3D model, which we've never seen before, and I don't know who prepared it, I don't know how accurate it is, does
So
not appear,
I can speak to that.
does not appear to show chain link fence. Also, there doesn't seem to be a height on the fence.
So I can speak to that real quickly with Paul's help here, Jadansky's. Paul and I worked together in developing plans. I produced this 3D model for Amanda and Paul. Paul, as kind of a help to me, will, for plan purposes, list the detail for a fence if the homeowner is uncertain of the fence. In conversations with Paul and Amanda, we had designed this 3D model for kind of visualization for the board to kind of help visualize what we're proposing, especially in terms of the landscaping. The conversation between Paul Jajansky and I about the specificities of the fence have not begun. The fences we do propose, however, are always pool code compliant and will be no less than 4 feet in height. And when we do submit to the plan, not to the planning board, but to the building department, we provide supplemental fence details to prove and help the building official and the reviewer understand that, we're building a 4-foot fence. It's going to be done by a fencing contractor with all the building subcode sheets and the details that are required.
Yeah, and I typically show a chain link fence until the owners decide which fence they're gonna go with.
Well, yes, that's the way this works. You propose something and then the board reviews it. It's not supposed to be, what's on the drawings is supposed to be what's proposed. How high is this white fence that's shown in this rendering?
It's just a 6-foot high PVC privacy fence.
Who's talking?
Oh, Mike O'Brien.
I just thought I heard you talk about 4-foot high fences in your earlier testimony.
Let's back up a second. So I said that it will be no less than 4 feet, which is a minimum of pool code compliance. The fence that we have in here would be a 6-foot PVC privacy fence. However, I know Paul Jadansky's plans alluded to a 4-foot high chain link fence.
That's correct.
Can I just clarify a point? There's an existing 4-foot high chain link fence that is our neighbor's fence, I believe. I don't know if that.
Like Paul Gansky, he had put together the plan with the chain link fence, and Michael put this together to show the white fence. We plan to keep the fence in compliance. We would have a white fence, and I don't know if the fence that Paul Gdansky had necessarily, it wasn't meant to be our fence. It was just to show that there will be a fence put up in compliance with having a pool.
That's correct.
We've never had the benefit of seeing this 3D rendering. What other changes have occurred between the drawing that was filed with the application and this drawing?
The only other thing I would note is that the drawing, we don't put landscaping in, and the reason we're showing this is to demonstrate the vast amount of landscaping we're putting in. As such, we are supposed to, for variance relief, show public benefit, and we believe that is a visual appeal to our neighbors and to anybody looking at our home from the street.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. The landscaping apparently is on the inside of the fence. Is that correct?
Yes, but it will grow. These shrubs that we put in would grow to be well above the fence, I would imagine.
And the fence is solid.
Correct.
So far, I have not heard any hardship discussion at all. And the only benefit that's been suggested is that fence will provide some screening and possibly the landscaping. That's not really the criteria for the grant of a C2 variance, which is what the statute requires. It shows how the variance, which in this case is, I think, 56% impervious coverage, will advance the intents and purposes of the municipal land use law, that the benefits of granting the variance substantially outweigh any potential detriments, and address the negative criteria as detailed above. And when it's a C2, the benefits aren't just supposed to go to the property owner, but they're supposed to accrue to the benefits, to the surrounding community rather. And I'm having difficulty understanding how 56% impervious coverage benefits the neighborhood. It's not the fence that creates a variance, it's everything else that's being proposed. And quite honestly, I'm not sure how the neighbors benefit from 56% impervious coverage. And the little testimony we had on drainage, and I don't want to steal Mr. Costa's thunder, is to address the additional runoff generated by your proposed development. So that can't possibly be a benefit to the public. So because it's addressing the conditions you proposed to create the variance. So I'm really at a loss as to how the statutory criteria is being met in this particular application.
Well, my clients are also willing to reduce, they stated they're willing to reduce the amount by 10% and leave the drainage to 3 units, which is more than what's needed. So that would be a benefit.
And I do just want to add that right now, we don't have a fence up. Our neighbors behind us, they have a chain link fence. Our neighbors next to us, they have a chain link fence. There is not a lot of privacy from us and our neighbors. And yes, we get along with our neighbors. We don't have issues with our neighbors, but us putting up a fence like this would create a lot of privacy for all of our neighbors adjacent to us.
It doesn't address the impervious coverage variance. I'm not disputing what you say.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And I think what you stated earlier, the public benefit needs to outweigh any detriment. From my perspective, the amount of benefit that we're giving is a positive, and there's no net detriment to anybody, which means that there's a net positive overall from my perspective. For the entire project, when you look at it as a whole, right? The whole project isn't just the impervious coverage of the pool and the patio, it's the fence, it's the landscaping, right? It's the extra seepage bit that we don't need after we reduce the amount of patio. So that's just kind of what we're trying to get across.
The variance and the way the reason you're before the board is for impervious coverage, and also I believe building coverage, but we're talking about impervious, so let's stay there. So the variance has to, the benefits of that are accrued by the public have to be related to the impervious coverage.
Well, that would be the additional drainage that they're putting in.
Is there a drainage issue in the neighborhood? there's no drainage issue, then there's no reason to put in more drainage than's required. "56% impervious coverage is a tremendous amount.
Just
And-
to
and when I
clarify,
heard-
we're
and when I-
proposing
And when
48.
I heard testimony earlier about creating a suburban environment, I'm not really sure if 56% create the suburban environment. That sounds very urban to me. And in fact, the borough ordinance at 35% is designed to create a suburban environment.
Right, and I just want to repeat this one more time. We're not asking for 56. We were very naive when we submitted this application, and you know, we've listened to many hearings and we've done a lot of research, and we've realized 56 is a lot more than this board would approve. And so we are certainly not asking.
Understood. Mr. Chairman, could I interject for 1 minute, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Not that I don't love the dialogue, but, all right, so the application before the board tonight is for 56%. The applicant has amended the plan or the application to 46 or 48%. But here's the million-dollar question. Paul, you're the civil engineer, correct?
Correct.
Okay, did you revise your plan to show the new values?
No.
Okay, can I make a suggestion? And again, we're at the end of August. If the board votes on it, I'm not sure exactly what the board is going to vote. If they do vote in the affirmative, I'm not sure exactly what plan the board is approving, because all you see is a sketch that's on. But more importantly, Marina, the public hasn't had an opportunity to look at a plan that's been amended because it doesn't even exist yet. So quite frankly, I'm not sure if the board even has jurisdiction to vote on the application because the public hasn't had an amended site plan that doesn't exist.
The board does have jurisdiction to hear this application tonight
So they have
and
the app-
to
they have-
and
they
to
have the
hear,
applica- They can hear the application, but they don't have
The board-
any paperwork to vote
the
on
board
because the
has
plan
the
doesn't exist.
jurisdiction. The board has the jurisdiction to hear the application tonight and the amendment that the applicants are proposing tonight.
And can I just add, we actually had seen a hearing.
Honestly, I respectfully disagree because the plan doesn't exist yet. There was a sketch, there's a 3D rendering, but there's no plan.
The board has the jurisdiction to hear the amendments that the applicants are proposing tonight to the plans that are submitted.
Okay.
And I just want to add, we've seen a case, I think the family was Jacoby. They had come in with a higher plan and they were approved to reduce that plan. So I realize this isn't how we should have come in with the 48% plan, but we've seen where it's been approved to reduce and it's been approved on the amendment that night. So that was why we figured we'd come in with this.
I don't mean to fight with anyone this evening. If the board approves a plan, the plan should be on file. That's my only thing. I've been doing this a very, very long time.
That
And
can be
I'm
a
not sure
condition of,
exactly how the board approves a plan that doesn't exist. But if, again, I'm not the attorney. I work with a lot of you guys, but if you think it can
Mr.
be
Chairman,
done.
point of order.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pfeffer.
Thank you. Can we open this up to some discussion or other questions from the other board members?
Yes, we're getting to
just-
that point. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
hold
think
that.
everybody who has spoken so far, their points are well taken and have made all their points very clear. But I would, my concern, and just the reason why I'm bringing this up is I would hate to just tell the applicants to go back and revise their plan and come back with a revised plan. And then we're going to have a discussion about, can that plan be scaled back further? So before we send them back to, redo their plan and come back again, I would just like to hear if there's going to be a concern about a 46 or a 48% plan, which I suspect there will be, but I don't know that for sure. And if there is, then we may as well have that discussion now so that if the applicants are advised to go back and redo their plan, and they come back again, we don't get into the position where we're telling them to go back and revise the plan again. Maybe tonight, at least through some discussion and questioning, we can hear whether even a scaled back plan to 48% or 46% would even be, you know, considered or entertained by the board, or whether the board would want something even more scaled back. And of course, it's up to the applicants whether they'd be willing to do that and you know, or just scuttle the whole thing. But I'm just asking if we can open it up for further questions from other board members so that we can address those issues as well.
No,
if
that's
that's in order.
No, that's a fair point, and it's certainly, that was the way we were going to proceed. You know, once we hear from our professionals, you know, the next step is to open up to the board. So, you know, thank you for that point. So with that,
Thank you.
probably a good enough time to do that. So, Mr. Pepper, since you've raised the question, why don't you go ahead and pose your questions on the application, if you would.
I was afraid you were going to say that. Yeah, I don't have a lot of questions. I'm just trying to be as practical as possible, you know, without just saying, you know, without just sort of sending you on your merry way and saying, come back later when you have a better plan. My concern is that even at 48%, there's probably still some more room to scale back in a way that would satisfy the board. And again, I'm saying that without hearing what other board members are thinking. Maybe the board looked at your proposed scaled back version and maybe most of the board members will say, okay, come back with that plan. And then, you know, we've got something to talk about. But, you know, as I said, I'm concerned that even that plan might not be acceptable. So I guess I have a two-part question. The first question would be, are you open to scaling back even further? And if so, would you have an idea at this point, and maybe you don't, and that's fine, but would you have an idea at this point where further scaling back could be done? And maybe your professionals can weigh in on that also.
Yeah, so I'd say we definitely want to work with the board and try to make something work. So to your first question, we want to work with you guys and try to figure this out to make the project move forward. In terms of where to scale back, you know, I'd like to hear, I don't know if anybody else from the board has feedback or thoughts, but we really, you know, we wanted the Cabana area for sun coverage. And to Michael's point earlier, it fit very proportionally in the backyard. And we think it still, again, doesn't take up that much room. We have a lot of green space. So I'll kind of leave it there. I don't know, Michael or Paul, if you want to speak to anything else, but that's kind of our thinking.
Yeah, going off of what Paul mentioned about the Cabana being for sun relief, you know, the only other reductions that I could see being made would be removing, you know, the aprons around the walkway, maybe of the pool, significantly reducing, you know, the patio off the deck. But at that point, you know, how much functionality does that pool really have at that point? Because a lot of, you know, I don't know if anybody else has pools out here, but, you know, typically your chaise lounge chair rests on the patio in the shallow end. And if I were to reduce that, you know, unfortunately, they don't have that opportunity to have chairs resting on patio. It's going to be in dirt and mud and, you know, wear and tear, maintenance, things like that. So really, the only areas that I can see being scaled back to get to Bruce's point, to come under that 48, 46% would be reducing basically all the patio around the pool. Quintessentially not even having patio, which I don't know how to that effect, you know, to get us under that really provides any type of usage for the Gregoffs at that point.
Yeah, I concur with Michael. You know, the one area, the shallow area provides an area for chaise lounges and so on. And the you know, we've reduced it down to where you can walk around the pool. If we eliminate any more, then you know, that creates other issues.
Let's continue. Let's hear from other members of the board. Mr. Cray?
Yeah, I'm gonna make one comment and then one question. You've kind of mentioned several times that, you know, things are proportional and, you know, there's a lot of green space. Kind of by the standards we're working with, there's not. That's why you're here. You know, the standard's 35%. We make exceptions up to 40%. Even with your revised plan, you're almost at 50%. So that's the issue we're talking about. So, you know, it might seem like, oh, okay, geez, we've got proportional layout. Per the code, you don't. So that's the issue. Question I have is, in an effort to get this down closer to a level where we might be able to accept it, I know you're saying the cabana is, you know, kind of sun shield or sun relief. Would you consider looking at the existing patio and since that's already coverage and building some sort of awning canopy roof above that and deleting the cabana from the plan?
It's something we consider. If you look at the size of the cabana, it's 12 by 16. So removing that would remove 2.4%. So that would go from 48.1% to, I believe.
Okay, well, I can, you know, I can't speak for the other members. I wouldn't approve 48%. I mean, just flat out, I wouldn't. So there's got to be some reduction here to make this work.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. Mr. Gibbons?
Just a couple of comments. One, not sure who came up with the lot coverage, but it's showing that it's 26.4, so we're already over, right, in the existing layout, and that was a new build in the last year. So I don't know if this needs to something for the building department, but if the house was built, did you guys add anything since you've been in the property in terms of?
No, it was what we purchased it at. We were surprised by that percentage too, quite frankly.
Because I know
we purchased it from Marge Properties.
Yeah, so I know we've run across this before with builders who have built over what, I mean, I know it's not a big number. It's really not something we need to be so concerned about today, but you know, two things on the builder front, and they left you with 0.1% left.
We saw that. There's even a little patio, so I think they calculated it maybe at the bottom of the stairs. So
yeah, no, we really moved in without realizing this at all. Like, and I realized maybe we should have done our research ahead of time, but we had no idea. We saw the big yard, and it was always our intention to put in a pool.
Right.
So I just want to put that in.
Yeah, it's something that we're struggling with as a board, figuring this out, because you bought a new house and they left you with absolutely no room to do anything else besides have that house. So it's something that we have to deal with as a board. You know, with that said, I'm concerned with the 48. You know, I appreciate you coming down, you know, the 8%, you know, and having the seepage pits and all those things that you're doing. But, you know, for me and for, well, I'm just going to speak for me, you know, 40 has been the number that, you know, for me and for most of us, I think has been a reasonable number. So, you know, my suggestion, I'm not going to tell you where to pull it from. You know, my suggestion is if you want to make this work, find some way, whether it be the deck, the cabana, the whatever. If you want to make it work, I would think you'd have to get somewhere around 40.
So if we remove the cabana area, it's 12 by 16, that's 2.4%. It brings us to 45.7. That's something we'd be willing to do if the rest of the board can give comments and feedback on that. That would be appreciated.
For me, I think you'd need to do more, unfortunately. You know, I don't want to beat you up, but that's a number that I've been comfortable with. So thank you.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Ask a question if you have one.
I was going to ask, is there a number that this board's comfortable with? Because to Michael's point, right, there's only so much patio we can remove to maintain function. So I don't know if the rest of the board can comment on that as you go around.
I think as you've heard, historically, we've tried to operate in the realm of 40% as a guiding post. And again, each application is reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but that is generally where we like to try to see applicants meet if they're exceeding the threshold. Let's,
So can I just make one comment real quickly?
Sure.
If we were to even consider removing the deck is like 3.5%. And I just don't see them having that removed since it was part of the home. It was built with the home. It was probably a feature that they purchased the home for. So even like considering to give up the deck would be, I think, very difficult for the homeowners. And then at that point, I'm still at 42, 43%. As I take away walkways, they're then left with almost nothing in the backyard aside from the pool. And at that point, what is, and not to sound arrogant, what is the point of having a pool if you don't have areas to lounge around it, to sit around it, to gather around it? The concept of a pool is to bring people together to enjoy time, create memories, and that's almost lost at that point. So that's the only comment I wanted to make. Removing the deck, it would be an option. It's just, I think at that point, I would refer to Paul and Amanda to see if they would be even open to considering that as a removable option.
Yeah, I don't think so.
okay, well, let's continue polling the board. Mr. Esposito?
Yeah, I think 40% is good enough for us right now. I think to go any more than that is going to cause us some trouble in the ongoing. So again, 40%, I think that's good enough.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Esposito. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, the board has, so maybe we need to frame this a little bit differently, and maybe this would help. The professionals you hired are doing a great job of advocating for you, as they should. But they're advocating from the point of view that they're giving back. That's not what's happening here. The 35% is the maximum. State statute requires us to have a positive and negative reason to grant something above this. So it's not a matter of giving back, because your professionals have done a beautiful job of creating a rendering, but that's not the way the law works. So you're at 34.9, and you're an oversized lot to begin with, which means a percent for you is more than the rest of the residents. And in fact, a pool that is 14 by 28 is 392 square feet. And the difference between 35 and 40%, if my math is correct, is 401.15. So the pool constitutes the variance that this board has in the past consistently considered. Now, it's not a requirement. The board has the right even to say no to that based on the positive and negative criteria. And so I want that to be clear, because I think your professionals who are doing a great job are kind of framing this as we're being unreasonable, when what our job is by state statute is to consider whether we should go above, and by case basis. And then and this board has generously given up to 40.5%. And currently that would be just the pool with no patio and no cabana. So I just wanted to kind of like explain why you're hearing from the board members what you're hearing from them. And this board has done a good job of maintaining their task, their mission. And they look at, and they've asked people to pull back to that 40 marker. And I think that that's, I know that would be what I would be comfortable with. 40, 40.5 maybe, but really not past that. And there would have to be some sort of positive and negative criteria that your professionals present that would then allow the board to vote yes for the 40 or 40.5. So that's my comment. I think the design is beautiful, but there is a statutory expectation, and there's a role that this board plays. And if I framed that incorrectly or inappropriately, Ms. Caslin or Ms. Stinley or Mr. Costa or Steve, I forget your last name, I apologize. Then Mr. Liddon, then please correct me. But I do want the homeowners to understand how this process works by state statute, as I understand it as an elected official.
Can I make one comment, Mayor?
Well, that would be Mr. Caslin. He's the chair.
Oh, okay. Even with doing the pool 1428 with nothing else but the pool, you still have to account for the 1 foot of coping that goes around the pool. So in theory, it is actually a 16 by 30 because of the impervious banner around it. So even with that alone, I am still going to be over by 1% per your 40% ask. I'll be at 41%. So I just wanted to clarify that. I will be 81 square feet over what they have allowable to be remaining if you allow them to go to 40%. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for that.
And if-
Mr. Killian.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Jim. Can't hear you.
You hear you.
Is that better? Okay. So this is you can hear me now, correct?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this is an issue this board's been dealing with since these homes in town have been rebuilt. The builders are stretching them out to the 35% max that's allowable by the town. We've found a few that have been built a little bit over, and we've had to deal with that. Also, with what's happened with COVID, a lot more residents are now seeking to put a pool in, and we've been running across this quite a bit. So I have two thoughts real quick. One is I think we should look at pools as part of and I brought this up at a prior meeting, the potential for it to be part of water retention, because the fact that when it rains, the water is typically held in the pool unless it overflows. But that we don't have that now. So what we have right now is a property that is difficult to put a pool in, and it's not unique to the town. And when this board is trying to come up with a solution, we have to be careful not to set a precedent where the next people come in and say, well, you did this for the last people and so forth, which is kind of why you guys went back and watched some of the meetings to see how we would approach this. So as much as I feel horrible telling you it's going to be difficult for you to put a pool in, under the circumstances and under our current laws, it's going to be difficult to put a pool in.
Can I,
Michael? Go ahead, Mike.
Make one comment real quickly? So when I start doing like background research on the town's code, the town's ordinances, I tend to reference Google Earth regularly just to see what people are doing in town, see if neighbors around the Gregoffs or around my projects have pools, to see if there was any red flags that come about. And during my perusal of Google Earth, I noticed that there was quite a lot of properties that were heavily covered with hardscaping. And so when I was talking to Paul Jajanski, the Gregoffs, about appearing in front of this board, one of my comments to them was like, we should go for everything in the kitchen sink, not really understanding how this board normally operated. Because I try to tend to say, people, you know, you have one shot opportunity to come here and plead your case. So why don't you go for everything? And that was maybe my misjudgment and my misguidance there. But I was going off of what I saw on Google Earth, which was a number of properties that look and appear to be vastly over lot coverage, just from an aerial perspective. I don't know if there's supplemental permeable pavers or drainage plans that were produced and variants in years past. But that tended to be to give me a guideline to kind of persuade the Gregoffs to at least go for a more ambitious plan than something tamed down and minimal. So I just want to make that one comment because I do refer to Google Earth a lot.
Michael, your point is very well taken. And I don't think it's a tightly held secret that there have been members of the community that have taken it upon themselves to just do what they want without applying for anything.
Yeah.
And that doesn't come back until they try to sell and try to get a CO. So
I know that far too well.
And we are not an enforcement agency. So that's between the building department and probably a neighbor that would call and complain.
Got it. Understood.
We don't do enforcement. We had a situation not too long ago where people came in with an application and they were already over 40%. We're like, well, now what are you going to do? Because now we're stuck in being an enforcement agency, but we're not. So yes, there are members of the community that probably have overbuilt their property without the proper permits. And again, when they try to sell, that'll come back and surprise them a little bit. So
I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to cover the base that it wasn't like we were trying to pull one over the board. You know, it was really me just trying to persuade them to go based off of what we saw on Google Earth.
Michael, I couldn't agree with you more. And I totally understand where you come from. And I'm sure the Gregoffs are going to say, we should have just did it. But of course, that wouldn't, you know, if they would have to remove it if they got, you know,
100%.
just like anybody else.
As a contractor, as a pool, I would never put it in knowing that we are well over that coverage number.
So all that being said, 40% is typically the number that the board is going to allow. And we've been really strict on it, specifically for the reasons that I mentioned, that we've said that to everybody else. And moving forward, we're probably going to say that to everybody else too, until maybe someday the borough looks at pools in a different way.
Understood. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Arkelian.
Thanks, guys.
I have a question for the board, for anybody from the board. Is there ability to use pervious pavers to not count towards coverage?
That would be a question for our engineer.
Steve or Rob?
Yeah, the code doesn't allow for it now. So whether you do impervious pavers, regular pavers, patio pavers, all counts the same. There's no reduction. Certain towns reduce by roughly 25% at River Edge.
Okay.
I think, not to belabor the point, Mr. Chairman, but I think, again, and sometimes I'm the bearer of really bad news and really good news. But certainly if you heard the previous meetings, you heard the board's comments, it sounds to me, make the pool smaller, lose the cabana, come back in with a plan and present it again. I think that's where.
Yeah, so Mr.
I think we
Costa.
have one board member left to hear from, Mr. Merman.
Okay, I have a question before I make comments. I have a question for Paul, the engineer. Paul, if you refer to your drawing notes, note number 10 states that you're going to remove 5 trees.
It's an error.
Okay, because I looked at that site and there's not even there's not even a flower in that backyard. That's straight lawn area, so there's no trees.
That's the planting plan.
Well, if you come back, correct the drawing, please. Okay. Now, as the mayor mentioned, we are looking at a larger lot. a lot of 8,000 square feet, slightly over, which is a little bit unusual for this area of Riverage. So when you're talking percentages, you've got to realize you're based on a larger lot rather than the hardship of a smaller lot. I think that, Michael, if I heard you correctly, did you state that if the current deck was removed, you still would not meet the roughly 40% or somewhere near that?
That wouldn't even be a consideration, I believe, that per the Greg Offs. So I was just making a point that even if I were to keep the pool at the same size, remove all the patio and then remove the deck, I'm still not touching your 40%
Okay.
request.
Let me suggest this. It's a matter of working numbers, and making some decisions. If you and I realize in a way that's a bit of a hardship to remove part at least of the existing deck, remove the canopy, and maybe put a half-size pool in there. I don't know if your company supplies them, but it's an alternate. And you could always have your shade with an umbrella or two, or one of these awnings that are powered and move out. So you could take care of that problem or desire. And I would suggest that the applicant go back, start with the pool size, look at part of the deck, and eliminate the cabana, and see if you can work to roughly 40%, because I, as a member, also adhere to that criteria. And that's about what I got. I agree with the rest of the board's observations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Merman.
Can I ask a question to Mr.
Sure.
Merman? If we remove the patio between the deck and the pool, it would get us to somewhere in the 43-44% range, which was approved less than a year ago for the jacuzzis on Park Avenue. Would you consider doing that? And we'd keep the 3 seepage pits, which would be above and beyond the amount that we would need, I would imagine. So it would provide public benefit.
If you're asking me the question, I set out criteria where you can find a reduction, and I pretty strongly adhere to the 40% criteria. So you're going to have to make some decisions and work it out. Again, I think part of it is your pool size. It's nice to be able to swim a lap pool, and if you can have it, but it's also nice to have a smaller pool if you can get it in rather than nothing.
You know, we came here, we want to work with you, and we're really hoping you're willing to work with us. The pool size we have right now is already below average. We don't want to reduce the pool size at that point. You know, to spend the money it costs to put in a pool, it doesn't really make sense. So we understand that you have this 35% regulation, but as you said, Mr. Merman, right, we have a bigger lot, and I realize, you know, percentage is a percentage, so that shouldn't necessarily matter, but we've seen people with much smaller lots get a lot more percentage, and they have full coverage, right? Like if you look on Google, what Michael was talking about, there are homes that have full coverage in their backyard. And we've also seen people, I know you don't want to set that precedent, but we've seen people get approved for 43%, right? And so we do have a bigger lot.
Really, to that point, the one that got approved for 43 was 225 square feet bigger than our lot. So it was even bigger, and it was still approved for 43.
Well, see, now here we go with the precedent. This is exactly what Mr. Arakelian was saying. You're arguing conflict. We're arguing statute. Okay. Well, I think statute kind of overrules comfort. I gave you a list of areas where you could consider manipulating to obtain what the board seems to consider as a threshold of 40%, and they're being very generous in that. So the problem is yours to solve. We've given you some ideas to go forward. You make your decisions, and if you want to come back with a revised plan, I'm sure the board will make a motion to or consider that in a motion.
Okay, if we wanted to remove all the patio, to Michael's point, I think we'd be around 41-ish. And would we be able to come back with a plan like that and carry this forward, Ms. Stinley? Or do we have to re-notice?
So you can request to Carrie to provide additional revised plans at a future date
So
without having to renotice.
So let me suggest this. You've heard the sentiments of the board members and where things stand with your application. And certainly we appreciate the fact that you're looking to try to improve your residents, and certainly we would like to work with you to the extent we can, but we do have to abide by certain statutory framework and rules that the mayor was alluding to earlier. So might I suggest that, as you just pointed out, go back, see what you can do to try to revise your plans. Certainly, I think if you can submit something that is a different scale for the board to review and consider, we'd be happy to do so. And I think, certainly, procedurally, we can certainly look to carry you to another meeting, once you've had a chance to go back and review your project. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, we could try to do that. I know we have a bunch of neighbors that joined. I don't know, are you going to let the public speak at all or not?
We can open it to the public if we can probably do that.
So we need a motion.
Sorry, even if we carry it over, I'm sorry. I just want.
Yeah, we can open to the public tonight, and if we carry it to another date, also open to the public.
Yeah.
And I would make that motion, Paul and Amanda, to carry. I don't, we do feel for you. We have to be consistent and fair in the way we act. But we can absolutely, I'd make that motion to carry. But if you want to open to the public, so that you can get the support of your neighbors, if Mr. Caslin calls for a motion and second, and the only reason I'm saying this is because tonight I am the Zoom moderator. I'm not normally, so normally I remain silent at these times, but I hope I don't mess it up.
Yeah, so I think we'd like to carry it over, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if we can hear from, because our neighbors have sat here now for over an hour, and we just want to, respect their time, if we can hear from a few of them.
That's fair enough. We'll take a motion to open to the public, please.
So made, Merman.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. Mr. Gibbons, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, any abstain? All right, motion carries. We'll now open to the public.
Okay, so this is my first time doing it, so please be patient with me. I see a number of people. I see someone has raised their hand, and that person is Kim. Kim, when I allow you to talk, you're going to have to give your name, first and last, spell your last name, and give your address. Is that correct, Ms. Stinley?
Yes, and you can make them panelists and then put them so they can speak and participate.
I think I can just allow them to talk. Let me see if that works.
Okay.
I'm afraid of doing too much and causing everything. So Kim, I believe I've opened you to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Kim Shirk. I live at 469 Bogart Road. My house backs up to Amanda and Paul's house, and we are completely in support of their plan. I think that all their ideas are going to look beautiful. Already, they've done a wonderful job with the landscaping in the front of their house. I like the idea of the white privacy fence, and I think they're going to do a great job if given the opportunity. And just on a side note, my parents live next door, 473 Bogart, the Lannies, and they also have an in-ground pool for many years. And it's been a joy to our family to have that, and I hope they get the opportunity as well.
Okay, Kim, I'm going to mute you now unless you have something more to say.
Nope, that was it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Can you lower your hand? That would help. Okay, now I see Chris G. Chris G has his hand up. Chris, you should be able to speak at this point.
Hi, Chris Gilday, last name spelled Gildea. I live at 486 Windsor Road, 4 houses down. And I just want to, it's first time ever being on a board meeting, a town meeting. So very interesting just to hear how it works. And, they're a great addition to the town itself, let alone our street. And, I know the benefits of the pool, and I know from being in the town and seeing other people's houses and the size of backyards, and I understand the variances going above 35%, they're still showing a lot of coverage in their backyard. They reduced it, and I understand you want to keep a presence of not going too high, but there should be, with new people coming to town, with people being at their homes, coming up with a different idea of just not sticking to a number. If someone has a backyard that's only like 10 feet by, the length of their house, I get it. They have way more coverage than that. And I think that should be under consideration. And they are still holding a lot of green area still with that. So, they didn't understand what the house is built when they got it and the strict rules of this town. All they're doing is trying to make their house better and make our street better. So I don't know. And I've seen other houses on our street that have full coverage with pools. And I've seen it other people's houses. So, with no coverage of any type of grass. So I think that should be under consideration, and they are trying to work with you. So I hope they would work with them. So thank you.
Okay, Chris, so I think you're at the end of your comments, and unless you have something else to say, I'm going to mute you now. Do you have anything else?
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm going to mute you.
Looks like that. Do we have anybody
There
else?
are other folks in attendance, but I don't know if they would like to speak.
You, if you're in attendance, you need to raise your hand. If you're by phone, I think you do a *9, and that will indicate to me that you'd like to speak. If you don't, that's okay too. So yes, we see a David, a Kim, a Marianne, a Scott, and Susan. If you would like to speak, you need to raise your hand at this time, and we will recognize you.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a negative. May I have a motion to close to the public?
So moved. Cray?
Gibbons.
Okay, Mr. Cray, Mr. Gibbons, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed and abstained. Okay, we are now closed to the public.
I think
So
the
first-
mayor was making a motion before.
I think I think at this point, I think I'll entertain a motion to carry the application to a future meeting to allow the applicant some additional time to reconsider their plans for their project and resubmit those.
So moved.
Second, Merman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just before we vote on it, let's make sure this is what the applicant actually wants.
I thought it was, but
That's- That's correct. We're going to carry forward and come back with a plan closer to the 40.
Okay.
And I see Ed is on. Is there a date
Yes.
that we can determine tonight?
Yes, the next available date, believe it or not, is October 13th.
Wow.
We have several D variances coming up in the next 2 meetings with a couple of C variances, and the schedule looks pretty crowded.
So that's October 13th, you said, Ed?
Yes, I did.
Oh, thank you.
Amanda and Paul, are you good with that?
Yeah, I mean, it would push back the installation probably to the following year, quite honestly. There's nothing sooner, Ed.
Well, we have 2 meetings coming up, and the next one, I don't know if you'd have your plans ready by.
No.
That's September 8th. And September 8th, that was carried from July.
Okay. All right, yeah, October 13th is fine.
And then the next one is the September 22nd, and I have a D variance and 2 C variances on that one as well. So unless the board thinks that it could fit it in quickly, which I tend to doubt, October 13th looks like the next available date.
Yeah, unfortunately, those applications are likely to take some time to be heard. So rather than have
Right,
you,
and they might be carried themselves.
yeah, rather have you come in and delay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
sir.
Perhaps we could schedule them, considering that we've heard the majority of their application. They know what they need to do. They're going to come back. If they get to that number, chances are we'll move through that really quickly. And instead of having to move off, installation for another year, maybe we can sneak them in the beginning of a meeting, that second meeting in September. I know it's a D variance coming up on that, but if we could probably get through this application pretty quickly because we've already heard the bulk of it.
What else do we have in that meeting, Ed?
You have the 364 Valley Road, which we carried from the last meeting, who wanted to install several deck additions and his plan wasn't complete. We asked him to come back for a new plan. We have 17 Elizabeth Street, which is a D use variance. And that's it right now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can I respond to Mr. Alec-Carolian's point?
Please do.
Mr. Alec-Carolian, if we put a spade in the ground next week, this pool's not gonna be operational this season, believe me.
I agree.
I think October the 13th is still a very valid date.
Yeah, I think, Jim,
Okay.
I think it's going to be tight, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand. I was just, because we've been through the bulk of this application, when they come back with the revisions, it should be a pretty quick review. But if I'll go with what the board want, the rest of the board wants.
Can I make one comment to moving the meeting date to October to Paul and Amanda's effect? My calendar and my construction board is very large. And the sooner I get a resolution and a memorialization and a building permit, the quicker I can go ahead and order their pool kit, put them in a production schedule. I do have a plethora of projects that are coming to head the beginning of next year. And the sooner I can order their kit and get them in a queue, the better chances I do have them, better chance I will have to build their pool in the 2020 fiscal year. If not, it's going to be really hard pressed and difficult to get them a pool for next year. So I just want to put that out there. If there's any consideration to maybe have that September hearing for them, the second one.
I appreciate the concern. Unfortunately, I don't think our agenda is going to allow for that. So I think October 13th is it. As much as we'd like to work with you, I think unfortunately, just given the volume of applications we have coming up, that's the only date we're going to be able to make.
No, we appreciate the consideration. Just wanted to ask. Thank you.
So,
And if anything happens between now and then, with one of those applications for that date, can we get them, move them up quickly into that?
yeah, Ed,
Yes, I will do that.
yeah.
This way they know they should get their plans in as soon as possible in case something opens up for them.
Correct. Thank you.
And we could always
Anything else,
make
I'm
an
sorry.
announcement at another meeting if the application is going to be heard at an earlier date.
Mhm.
Okay.
They're at the top of the list if anything opens up.
Thanks, Ed.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed. All right. So I think we have a motion on the floor from the mayor, and it was seconded by Mr. Merman, I believe.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion to carry this application to October 13th so that the applicants can submit in revised plans. I'll do the roll call.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes,
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay,
Good night,
good
folks.
night.
Good night.
So Marina, that
Thank you.
means there's no notice needed. We're just carrying it, correct?
Yes, yes.
All right, great. Thank you guys very much.
That is the last item on the agenda for this evening, unless anybody has anything else.
I just wanted to just bring up one more time that I think we need to, I don't know what's happening or what we're missing, but another house that's over when it's built.
I can
Their
speak to
lot
that.
Their lot coverage is 26.4. And this is the
So-
second time in like 3 weeks or 3 meetings that we've had a similar issue. I'm not sure what's happening, that this is, maybe their calculations are off. But combined with that and them leaving a builder, leaving them 0.1% to build, I think we have to figure something out with what's going on with that. It just doesn't seem right to the homeowners. And plus, if we're actually having houses that are overbuilt is not a good thing for us.
Mr. Gibbons, I fully agree with you, and I've labeled this the porch and patio syndrome, okay? And we've got to come up with a regulation or a change in plan review or something, and maybe between our planner and our legal counsel, we can come up with some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but we're having a lot of houses. I mean, we have all these, $1 million houses that are going up in this town now, which is great, but we're really maxing out our spots. And
I know what the answer is.
I think these people actually bought a house with a deck, which is great, which doesn't usually happen with these properties.
The answer is that the borough changed the ordinance to make it 30% instead of 35. So when these builders come in with their building plans, they're down to 30%, and then we can grant them a variance if somebody wants to build a deck and so forth. Because right now, you're right, they're building right to the edge, and they're leaving the homeowner no flexibility if they want to do anything different down the road. If the borough was to revisit that ordinance and change it to 30% or 32% even, that would limit the builders to what they're doing now. That's the way around it.
If that can stop it, I'm all for it.
So what I would like is I'd like for this body to consider making a motion, a recommendation to the council, and for that recommendation to be reviewed by Mr. Baring and Ms. Stinley, and so that it comes before the council as a formal request from the land use board. Now, if the members of the land use board want to make it a topic for discussion at the next meeting, that's perfectly reasonable. But I think this body I think the protocol would be this body should make that recommendation. I certainly would support it. I don't know if this body is ready to consider making that recommendation. Steve, Marina, could you chime in on what you think about the suggestion and the process that would be appropriate?
So I actually have been working with Brian Chukasky, who's the redevelopment counsel for the borough, in my office, and Tom Behrens and Lizette, the borough administrator. We pulled all of the building permits that were issued in the past 2 years and I looked through about 60 pages of permits and found about 40 residential properties that looked like they had been new builds on an old foundation, just so we could see what's happening in the borough and find out if this isn't that we already know it's an issue, but find out where the issues are coming from. So I can work with Brian and Lizette and Tom to, if you'd like, put a resolution together to send to the council to ask for them to address the issue.
So, and Chris, I hope you're not bothered by me kind of like taking the lead on this. I do respect your position as chair. I just want to make sure that we don't end this meeting without acting in some way, or at least making a decision to consider this formally at a future meeting, so that the board can consider whether it's 30, 32, or what sort of recommendation they want to make. So I'm going to stop speaking and ask you, Chris, Mr. Caslin, to take that lead.
Yeah, I think given the fact that we're missing several members this evening, who I think should also be heard on this topic, I think it's worthwhile that we have a further conversation about it and maybe making it an agenda item, Ed, on the next meeting.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion too, that Rob and Tom get together and come up with a number that they think would be fair to both the builders, the homeowners,
Well, the only
and people
thing,
that'll move to the future? Rob?
Chairman, just if I can, Jimmy, many, many years ago, there was discussion about an FAR, to impose an FAR if you wanted to cut down the sizes of the homes. And then it was,
What's an FAR, Mr. Costa? For the public's benefit, can you tell us what an FAR is?
Floor area ratio. But what would happen if once it goes over a certain percentage of that, then everything becomes a D variance, if you want to increase that. And that was kicked around with the council, previous councils ad nauseum. And that was, for whatever reason, never went through. Then there was a discussion again to go from 35 feet, which was the height, down to 32 feet, which obviously took place. Then there was the small lot ordinance. Then when people start building, bigger homes, putting them on the ranches are 5 foot off the property line. It was never a setback. So the 5 foot remained and the house went up to 32 feet, and that caused a lot of grief and suffering. So you need to look at it closely. It's been studied in the past. And I think Mr. Merman, Dick, I'm pretty sure you were involved in all of those discussions also.
To some extent, I'm the one who originally said that one of the things you can only really do is the FAR.
Right.
But that
But
triggers
again,
other.
the FAR puts a tremendous burden on the residents, because once you go over that number, then everything comes to this board, and then the bar gets set very high because it becomes a D variance. So you need to weigh the positives. Certainly, it's a scale, whether or not. But I haven't heard too many people complaining lately. And again, Mayor, you would know better than me as far as the size of the homes. But all of the builders push it right to the envelope, and that's what they've been doing, and that's what they're doing. People come in and buy them. They don't do their diligence as far as the ordinance. Then they get in there and they want the amenities. And that's how you get to something tonight to 56%, drop it to 48%, and then it's, it's Monty Hall and let's make a deal. And again, Marina, no disrespect, but any board I've represented, if the board is going to vote on something, just my opinion, the plan should be in front of them. That's what they approve, because it makes it easier when the building permit comes in, because then it's not a question, well, what did the resolution say? What did the board think? What did the board actually approve? And then something different happens. And then obviously the board members are upset because this isn't what we approved. How did this happen? And then that discussion goes back. So that's my only recommendation to every board I've ever represented. And I've worked with Brian in the past, and I think he shares the same mindset with that. Whatever the board approves, here's the set of plans, here's what it says, here's the setbacks, here's all the information, and it goes in the resolution, and that's it. And then again, I've spoken too much on it already, Chairman and Mayor, and but again, if you look at some of the old stuff, you'll see a lot of discussion on the size of the homes and the setbacks and the heights and all the above.
So, Mr. Caslin, if I may, I believe this board created a subcommittee to look into this issue. I think we did it this past January and the January before that. I believe this year we asked Eileen to chair that. I don't know if that committee has had a chance to meet, but if we're going to have a fruitful conversation for the next meeting or the meeting after that, I believe that committee should be prepared to speak to whatever they've been able to achieve. COVID certainly has, caused a lot of difficulty for getting together a meeting. And then, of course, I guess Tom would need to review what has been, Mr. Costa brings up, what has been reviewed and not reviewed in the past, so that this body can make a recommendation to the council that they feel comfortable with and defensible. What do you think, Mr. Caslin?
Yeah, I recall at a prior meeting that I had asked Eileen to give us an update on the committee's work and what was happening at a subsequent meeting. And I know she was away and she had a work emergency this evening. So I think it's certainly warranted to get an update from her. I'm happy to check with her and see what make sure she's in a position at some point to give us at least an update, maybe not a full presentation depending on timing, but with the goal in mind to get something formal in place.
And Mr. Liddon, would it be okay for you to, when you reported back to Mr. Baring, that this history of review is something that we'd like Mr. Baring to weigh in on and offer a comment after, of course, as it was suggested, touch base with Mr. Costa and Ms. Stinley and the BA, considering that we are already in a review of the building department?
Yes, Mayor, I've already included that in my notes for Mr. Barron, so yes.
Thank you.
I just had two other just points or things to think about. One, I think Mr. Costa, you mentioned earlier that there are pervious stones that people can put in that some other boroughs allow 25% reduction or whatever that number might be.
Right.
That's something that we should be considering here to help some of these homeowners kind of get what they want and not cause problems. So I don't know if that is something that, would be recommended, but, maybe something for us to consider. And as someone who is on a smaller lot, is there some way of, I know this particular applicant wasn't on a small lot, but that we do have a lot of 50 by 100, 155 by 100s.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some sort of minimum amount of square footage green space that could be in an ordinance? So, if you have a minimum amount or a minimum percentage or maximum percentage, is there some way of kind of keeping these huge lots from going crazy, but helping the small lots that really don't have room to put in a patio or a deck?
All I can tell you is this, and it's not just this. I've been doing private work with people putting in pools. 2 years ago, if I signed one soil moving application to remove pools, I've signed probably 10 in this town. This fad will not continue too much longer. Just my opinion.
I'm not even looking for that. I'm looking more for the patio and the deck.
Right.
I get the pool thing is probably going to go away, but the deck and the patio is not.
I have a question. Most of the time, the issue is one where the homeowner has been unaware of the restrictions, or at least that's what we're presented with. We bought the house, we moved in, we want to add a deck, and there's no room for expansion because we're already at the maximum lot coverage. Is there a way to require disclosure from the seller to the buyer so that they can't then come to us after things? I had no idea.
Honestly, I would probably run it past the borough attorney, or again, could the building department disclose? Obviously, it could be done during, the CO process. Because the builder comes in, the developer redoes the house, whatever. Prior to him selling, he needs a certificate of occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at that point, the borough can disclose here. The homeowner, whoever's buying it, should have done that diligence. I would think they have attorneys involved. I would think they have title people involved. But again, lately, the frenzy that took place, I guess, in the last 6 months with people bidding on houses and losing houses and the frenzy that came about, maybe some of that fell through the cracks. And then people get in there, like this evening, you're at 35%. You can't put another square inch of pavement on there or anything other than coming to this board for relief. And yet whether they did realize it when they purchased it or they didn't, now they have a home and they have nothing in their backyard but grass. And I get it. It's an issue, but I don't know how you stop it at that point.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Rob. I think people aren't looking at the compliance angle when they're in buying mode. They're just looking to make sure the house is standing, there's no title issues, and they see a big backyard and they think, okay, hey, this is great. I've got so much upside to move forward and do something in the future. When you do the math, that's not the case.
Yeah, and no one's given what their coverage is. It just,
right.
As someone who's gone through the buying and selling process 100 times, They're not getting that. No one's telling them that you're at 34.9.
No, because the survey, you've seen it, like a general property boundary survey is just going to give you,
Well, it doesn't give coverages. It
No.
won't give the
You gotta figure
coverages,
that out
but,
yourself.
but we require an as-built for every house that's built in this town. So you can't get the CO unless they produce an as-built survey. Whether or not that as-built is given to the future buyer, that one I don't know. Certainly, it's on record with the town, but I don't know whether or not, I wouldn't get the Oprah request. Again, I don't know if Nicole in the building department would get an Oprah request or if somebody would look at the file. I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not involved in that. I could certainly
Yeah.
ask her tomorrow.
But unfortunately, you could still buy an older house that wasn't built right, and that's at 37%, or whatever,
Correct.
So the newer build is quote unquote easier, but you could still have an older house that was, built wrong.
You're still probably gonna.
You know,
do the
the
survey.
old adage is let the buyer beware. And again, people have to do their diligence. And again, if there's a reason there's a zoning board and you guys are it, and there's a reason why there's a municipal land use law, and there's a reason why they enabled the towns to adopt ordinances. And, there is no precedent. So I know that was argued earlier. There is no precedent. Every application stands on its own merit. And so be it. And it's difficult. Zoning is difficult. A zoning board is difficult because you're dealing with residents. You're not dealing with major projects, major development. Most of them is a resident. So emotionally, it's difficult. If people don't get what they want, or that impacts the adjacent property owners, it can get very touchy, so to speak. So again, Mayor, put a subcommittee together and then analyze it, but
Well, we
this
have a
discussion has taken
subcommittee.
place many times.
Yeah.
We've had a subcommittee. I think the process, from my way of thinking, I may be incorrect, but would be that this body would grapple with recommendations to the council so that the council is considering what this body could live with and what this body considers to be fair and reasonable,
Right.
because it is the task, it is the burden of this body
Correct.
to meet with the public, not the council. So instead of it coming from the council to the land use, I think it needs to go from the land use to the council. And then it would be my hope that the council would take serious the recommendations from this body, because this body is really the experts in that they are the ones dealing with the public. So that's my thought process.
And
The
just
good news
a
is it
comment,
never rains in New Jersey. I mean, we've just found out about this on Saturday, on Sunday and Monday. It doesn't rain here, so really, it's very little impact. But anyway, just tongue in cheek on that one.
Marina, you were saying something?
and if the council does decide to make an amendment to the zoning code, then the land use board would then also have time to review that decision and make additional comments before the council passed any ordinance change.
Sounds good to me.
All right, on that note, I think we've done enough on the evening. I will reach out to Eileen before the next meeting. In the meantime, I think I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
So much for one application meeting.